All right. Welcome everyone to Seattle-Nantes spring event. You can see our agenda today. We will be meeting Chris from Lantern Brewery, and he'll be showing us around, and then there'll be an opportunity for a Q&A, and then we will be doing a drawing, and then you'll get to meet our 2021 scholarship recipients. And over on the right, you can see this is the design label that is in the work for the beer collaboration. And the in the middle, it'll say it's called 8,000 kilometers because it's roughly 8,000 kilometers between Seattle and Nantes. And the Nantes version, the label will be with Nantes upright, and for Seattle will be reversed. So kind of you got a sneak peek to what the label will look like for the beer. And with that, I will pass it on to Chris.
Good morning. Bonjour, bonsoir. I thought it might be of some interest to just take a very brief look at our brewery, and maybe I'll be able to touch on a few of the things that we try to bring to the craft beer scene here in Seattle that I was inspired by my time spent in France. And we'll just start. Let me see if I can switch the camera. No, I won't. I'll just walk backwards. So this may look similar to other small breweries if anyone frequents small breweries in the area. But we have our tasting room. As a microbrewery, we're licensed to serve our own beer here, so we take advantage of that. So it's a small seating area, indoor and out. Not much different there, except the types of beer that we serve are quite different from most other breweries. And also, we proudly fly our inspirational drapeau. So not many other breweries are brave enough to fly those colors. Let me just show just very briefly the scale of our operation. Behind me are some, well, machinery effectively. It's stainless steel tanks that are very similar to other brewery tanks in the world. One for processing the milled malts, which we use barley, wheat, oats, triticale, sometimes rye, a mix of different grains. That's actually one of the things that characterizes the brewing tradition from northern France and Belgium over into Franconia and the other northern stripe of Europe is very often beer was created with what was directly around. It was imported starting in the Hanseatic times, but it was often much more economical to use grains that were locally grown. So that's a huge focus of what we do, is use local grains. So whereas this part of it is just the shiny metal, not particularly different than other breweries. One thing that does set us apart is the use of barrique, fût, chêne. So growing up in Oregon, one of my first jobs was picking grapes in a vineyard in the Willamette Valley. That's stuck with me my whole life. So one of the traditions that we're carrying on here is to use oak barrels as a storage medium and a transformational medium for the beer that we brew. So this is quite different in a lot of respects from other breweries around here, in the sense that these are all typically wine barrels and not the spirits barrels that give a very pronounced, often imbalanced kind of flavor profile. So we're using fairly neutral and in most cases second use oak wine barrels of variety of sizes. These behind me are 500 liter, 500 liters, 225, etc. So we have a good selection of sizes and of vintages to use as far as the conditioning and the storage and the further re-fermentation of our beer. The process just in general follows somewhat closely most American craft brewing, but again with this fairly major exception. Whereas we have the stainless steel tanks to initiate fermentation, such as this one, we often divert out of the start of fermentation into the oak barrels and continue the aging and the processing of the beer that way. Most of our beer goes into kegs, the 50-liter kegs there in the background. But an increasing amount is going into bottles. Let me switch and talk really briefly about the particular beer that we had decided to pursue for the collaboration. In discussing some of the ideas, we wanted to do something that was easily accomplishable by both us and by Bubar. And we wanted to have something that drew from ingredients that were local to each of our installations, each of our cities. And we wanted to have something that was somewhat unique. Everybody knows IPA. There's no reason to do another one. The world drinks lager on a mind-boggling scale, so that doesn't make a lot of sense to have a lager. So we chose this type of beer that actually is, you could say it's a Saxon beer. You could say maybe it became famous in the Prussian era. It has some history behind it, but it comes from the central uplands of I think Saxony-Anhalt. So middle of the what's now Germany, but the type of beer is a fun, interesting, rustic beer that really represents a wide tradition that would have been shared across the entirety of Northern Europe of brewing a beer using a good amount of wheat, the rest barley, aging it or holding it until it was ready for consumption. It wouldn't be held that long, but one of the preparation methods for sending it out of the brewery into the drinking establishments was to prepare it to dampen down any existing fermentation through the use of salt. And often the beer would have been flavored a little bit with local fruit. So those were the kind of hallmarks that drew us toward this style of beer, this type of beer, to use a Washington fruit. So we chose cranberries, which incidentally are near and dear to my family's tradition as well. My family's history includes some cranberry growers in the Long Beach Peninsula in Washington. And then we really wanted to use this beautiful sel de Guérande to finish the beer and provide another dimension of flavor and feel. So we're really excited to continue this. I think Stefan is going to be brewing that fairly soon. We're going to progress on brewing it, hopefully in conjunction with Stefan's brewing. And we'll present this beer, and we hope that it'll be a memorable collaboration, certainly memorable for those of us that are participating for the last few months. But we hope that people will understand the reason behind it and the kind of idea, bring these ideas and to share the concept and to really work on something together, even though we can't physically be together, which we will hope to do again sometime in the future. And I think that's all I would dare to bore you with. I'd be happy to answer questions or happy to sit quietly, depending on anyone else's desires.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. So people are free. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or there's not many of us, you can just unmute yourself and ask your question.
I have a question. Where is it bottled?
Right there.
Ah, okay. Wow.
Oh, that's a bad shot. It's a small manual bottling machine. I can hook it up to a variety of sources, so it can come right out of a tank. It can come basically into a series of kegs if we need to. We can feed the machine and manually feed in bottles of a variety of sizes and manually cap them, manually rinse them, manually label them, manually package them.
Wow.
It's a labor of
So
love.
do you use volunteers for all of that manual stuff, or is it just you and your staff?
It is just us and our staff. The nature of a brewery, unfortunately, does not really lend itself to what could be some fun, fairly low impact type of volunteer thing. There are breweries that I guess accept that risk. I am a little unwilling to do so, having fairly intimate firsthand knowledge of some of the dangers, which include heavy objects, moving objects, noxious and or suffocating gases, often very hot surfaces. The floor is very slippery. So whereas I would love to just set up a fun labeling party sometime, and we may be able to do some small set of that in the tasting room proper. When we do a full-scale production and we're trying to get 2,000 bottles done in the span of a day, things get kind of crazy and they move quickly and there's a lot of slipping and such. So that's a little more dangerous than I'm willing to throw unsuspecting but well-meaning folks at.
Are you regulated by FDA rules? Do you have specific rules you have to follow?
Oh my, yes. You name an agency, we are probably regulated by it.
Oh, wow.
At the top level, we're federally regulated by the Tax and Trade Bureau as a registered brewery, which includes the honor of being taxed for all of the production and removal. We are also subject to FDA and USDA regulation as a food producer.
Wow.
We are subject to state ecology, labor and industries. Again, there's excise taxes on the beer and specifically outside of all the other regular business taxes. There are litter taxes. There are
Yeah. Wow.
breweries basically have kept most large bureaucracies afloat. Breweries, wineries, distilleries, especially in the U.S., but elsewhere in the world as well. But
Sounds like a lot of paperwork.
yes, my
How much?
prior career was in a different regulatory sphere, but I am lucky in the sense that I was well prepared for the bureaucracy, the regulatory layers, and I happily file away my forms and pay my taxes. Yes.
Great. Thanks.
Good morning, Chris. It's Larry. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm well, thanks.
Good. I think it would be interesting for folks to know a little bit more about your localist orientation. You alluded to trying to source Washington grains and so on. And where are some of these things coming from? Is it some Western Washington wheat? Is it Eastern Washington? Where's all this coming from? I think folks would love to know.
Yes, and yes, and yes. Let me get a visual aid here. One of our sources is here. The Skagit Valley happens to have some fantastic growing conditions for, as anyone knows, up here. I believe it's literally hundreds of different crops. Some of those are seasonal, some of them are perennial. One of the hallmarks has been in years past that barley and wheat and other grasses have been grown as a cover crop for cabbages and peas and sometimes tulips, a lot of other crops. So it was rotated in just as is done in lots of other parts of the world. Unfortunately, the valley the acreage of these grasses was not great enough to warrant participation in kind of a global barley or wheat market. So they would plow it under. They would literally just grow these beautiful plump barleys and wheats and then plow them straight under and then go on to the next crop. So Skagit Valley malting arose in many cases just a few kilometers or miles from the fields, and they were able to enlist lots of small farm crops of smaller than usual size to develop a very local malting industry. And so we've been with them from the beginning to try to allow those farmers to take advantage of the crops that they've previously plowed under as cover crops, cut them, sell them to this Skagit Valley malting, and get a lot more value out of their land, and in the meanwhile also preserve a lot of the farmland that was in danger of being sold off because it was unprofitable. So where we use very local ingredients, it's often very tied to a specific rationale, not just that it's local, but because that actually very deeply participates in a local food economy and bolstering local economies. So these grains are, again, grown within a few miles of Burlington, Washington, which is near Mount Vernon, Washington, which is north of Seattle a few hours. And they are grown, trucked maybe 2 miles down the road, stored until they're ready to be malted there. And then we purchase them and they bring them down in a truck. And so we can use this kind of hyper local ingredient. And where this was all a Western Washington example, there are similar examples coming also from the eastern side of the state, where some of the more interesting pressures related to land use irrigation, growing crops versus allowing grazing versus, again, turning the land over to development, or basically paving and road building. And so we also use grain from Eastern Washington, and then to a lesser extent, some of the other states just joining us. So Idaho, Oregon, and then a little bit from Montana. But that's a lot of what we attempt to do, is to really bring those ingredients from this region back into our beer, so that our beer can, in very much the same way that the beer and other food traditions from many other parts of the world, including those that we love in France and Belgium, have developed out of these local focuses, and developed character based on the local ingredients and the way that they're combined and the way that they're used. I hope that wasn't overlong, Larry. Thank you.
Chris,
That was-
can you talk a little bit? Oh, sorry. Can you talk a little bit about how you gravitated towards French and Belgian style beers? And I know you speak French. I know you've traveled in the region. What's the connection, and how did that all come about?
Trying to think of how to be most concise. There's a path, personally for me, there's a path in my life that led from growing up, learning some other languages. French was actually troisième. I became interested in fencing in I guess grade school, and so there is somewhat of a history in France of fencing, escrime. I was very lucky to meet a French fencing coach. I say French. He was from Toulouse. Don't know that he would have claimed that, but the French language, therefore, has always been something that's very close to me, and I love, even though I do not do it justice. I'm very sorry. The fencing allowed me to travel to Paris when I was young, also to Switzerland to participate in junior world fencing events. Again, when I was in college, I got a chance to live in Paris and train outside of Paris at Saint-Maur for almost a year. And so that allowed me not only to be a little more involved in fencing in French language, but also to start to be exposed to these crazy Belgian beers. And from there, when I came back to the US, I realized that not that many really, not that much beer was reminiscent of what I had. There were some attempts to kind of create beer that was named something similar, or that had, I could tell there was an idea, but not much of it really seemed to resonate, balance or flavor, or really the idea, anything other than a name with American breweries. So when I started this brewery, I wanted to capture that and try to retain that, and to try to bring that to the US. So that's a convoluted story that probably only makes sense to me, but I hope I touched on a few of the points you were getting at.
how long has your brewery been in operation, and how much do you sell in your brewery compared to what you sell, like bottles you sell outside?
Yeah, we have been, well, this weekend we celebrate our 7th anniversary in this location. It was basically 3 years prior to that we started the brewery. So 10 years as a brewery. The amount that we sold prior to December 2019, inside and out, was about the same. So about half and half inside, and then the other half was outside to restaurants and bars in the local area. Now it's basically 99% in, 1% out, and we're trying to climb back up from 1% toward the 50 or more percent.
So what's the origin of the name Lantern?
I love to think of beer as a living food. It has energy, it has spirit, it has the ability to illuminate conversations and ideas and history. So we wanted to come up with, and by the way, when I say we, I mean my wife, Lori. She's there in the background. I'm gonna try not to disturb her too much. She and I, well, she has put up with my nonsense for far too long with all this, but she is a very integral part of it. So we together wanted to bring that idea of the sense that beer could bring people together, could illuminate ideas and enlighten conversations, and could be a force for sort of bringing new ideas, something like that.
Thanks.
Okay, I have another question then. So I know how we approached this particular new beer, but in general, when you want to do a new beer, what kind of a process do you go through in deciding what to do?
Well, sales. I hate to say it, but I'm a realist. Very much, there's an ideational, crazy part of me that says, let's make beer with carrots. And then the pragmatic part says, well, you won't sell much. So there's a very strong shaping effect with the sales aspect. But putting that aside, more of the fun and interesting part, let me just use these guys as an example. Seasonality does drive a lot of that ideation, and it's occurring to me that may be mirrored. So you may not be able to read. It says Cabaret Sauvage. We had the chance to acquire Cabernet Sauvignon wine grapes from a local winery. So that was an example of a beer idea that presented itself when I was thinking through seasonal crops and thinking, oh, maybe we can get some wine grapes this year. Likewise, seasonality drives much of the tactical production, in the sense that this year we'll try to be ready for the apricot harvest. We use whole fresh fruit from local growers, and so we have developed a process over several years of using that, but the process itself is very dependent on when we get the call that says, we think this is the week where the apricots, or where we think the tart cherries are going to be harvested. We get a call from the grower and they say, okay, we think we can be there on Wednesday the 23rd. So there's a strong element of seasonality, both in the ideas behind the beer and the process behind it. Some of the inspiration has come from just seeing if we can do something that sounds crazy, such as brewing a beer with pickled beets and a little sweet berry component to see if we can balance the pickled beets in order to get a very unusual and a beautifully colored magenta beer. Didn't have any idea how it was going to taste to begin with, but it was just an idea that I wanted to explore. Likewise, right now we have a beer that's inspired by the Salsa Chamoy from northern Mexican state that includes dried fruits macerated with a very strong beer base, and then morita chiles. So it was a culinary idea that I tried to translate into a barrel-aged beer effectively. Hopefully that's some of what you meant.
Thank you. And Marcel in the chat asked, what are some of the most popular beer profiles?
For us, or for what people that walk in expect?
I don't know. Marcel, do you want to clarify?
Hoppy, certainly
For
hoppy
you
beer.
is what Marcella says. What are the most popular? Which ones do you like the most, I guess?
Again, trying to balance this concept of being a functioning revenue generating brewery with also being able to present crazy ideas. In both veins, hoppy beer is very popular, of course, up in this part of the world. We try to put our own spin on that hoppy beer and present something to people that maybe they didn't expect, but that does turn out to be very popular. So, for example, these are barrels that are full of fresh hops. So a very, very popular beer is the fresh hop beer, where we are using, well, other breweries will take a fresh hop delivery, just the cones, just those flowers, beautiful aromatic flowers, and brew a hot processed beer with those, and then sell it in the fall. We've taken a very different and turned out to be a very popular approach of taking those same fresh flowers and putting them in the barrels, and then placing the beer in with the hop flowers to soak for only a few months. But that comes out as a very, very different, very aromatic, but not overly bitter, and a very different idea on a fresh hop that for us has turned out to be very popular. Likewise, some of the empty barrels that I was standing in front of over here are just recently emptied because they had tart cherry in them. And so fruited beer for us is very popular because we do this unique process of using whole fresh fruit and aging it in a barrel, and then presenting that to the customers. And especially in the springtime, things like these slightly soured apricot and tart cherry and plum beer choices tend to be very popular.
Wonderful, thank you.
And how did you connect beignets with beer?
Sorry, the beignets?
Yeah, how does that connect? I always think of them as coming with coffee, but you're pairing them with beer. How does that work?
Well, we're certainly not discriminating. Coffee is a beautiful thing as well. It connects in the sense that they are another small local business that we wanted to support. Their model was to basically have farmers market and fair type pop-up stands And we heard that they were looking for a venue in North Seattle. And so we got in touch with them and worked out that they can come and set up in our tasting room outside area every 4 weeks, I guess, and sell their beignets and their delicious coffee. And then if people so choose, they can come in and have one of the beer choices that we've chosen to try to pair on that day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. Are there any final last questions or comments for Chris? All right. Well, thank you so much. That was amazing. I learned a lot.
Thank you. Merci à tous.
Merci.
All right. I'll pass it off to Susan.
Yeah, we'll do the drawing now. So I wrote everybody's name down on a Post-it note and put it in a bowl. And I'm not looking at the bowl, I'm looking up at you guys, and I'm gonna pull out 2 names. We have 2 gift certificates to Lantern Brewing that we're giving away as the door prize. So the first name, wait for it. I stuck them together here. I can't get it open. Okay. Oh my, Antoine, vous avez gagné.
Thank you a lot. Merci beaucoup. I win a lot with your association. Damn.
Are you, you're out in Spokane though, are you not?
Yes, I am in Spokane right now.
Okay, but for the summer, you're coming back to the Seattle area, I hope?
I mean, next Saturday I'm going back in Bellevue. I'm done with school, so.
Okay, perfect. We'll get you the gift certificate. All right. Fabulous. All right, one more coming up. All righty. Our second grand prize winner is Ariane.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very happy.
All righty, we will be emailing the gift certificates out, and then you can go to the brewery and you can get any of those amazing special beers he was talking about. And if you want to wait for fall for the hoppy one, you can do that. All righty, congratulations, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to introduce our 2 scholarship recipients for 2021. Seattle-Nantes has given out over 80 scholarships since 1989. And actually, Kristen, who was on the call, she was at the time, Kristen Bennett was one of our first scholarship recipients for the Goldmark Scholarship. And our first scholarship recipient that I will be introducing is Antoine Traen, and he was awarded the Francis Bennett Scholarship. And so I will pass it on to Antoine.
So hello, my name is Antoine Drean, but it became Drean by moving to the US. I'm a French international student. So I'm born and I grew up in Orléans, in France. It's like an hour and a half in the south of Paris. And by car, yeah. And so I grew up all my life there. It's a small town for a US population, but it's a big town for a French citizen. And in the summer 2018, my father got a new job in Bellevue, Washington. So all my family moved to Bellevue, Washington, where I finished my scholarity. I did my last 2 years of high school in Interlake High School. It was a public school with a lot of American students, and there was not that many French students. So it was a bit of a tough time, to be honest. the switch from French to English was not the easiest part. But after those 2 years, I was able to enter at Gonzaga University, and I will be graduating and majoring in sports management with a minor in French, plus a minor in broadcasting. That's basically all I've to say about my life. Yeah, I don't know
Do you
what I.
want, yeah, do you want to share how you've incorporated French language in and kind of like the leadership skills that you've shown, like working in sports and sharing your love for French culture?
I mean, as you can hear, French culture never leave me. I don't know if it's a gift, but I still have my French accent when I speak in English. It's not easy every day to have an accent because you're not always understood when you speak. People can um, look toward you and be like, where are you from? And having funny conversation. But I feel like it also brings like attention to me, and people will listen more to me because I sound different. So they're like curious about what I could say. And also have a different point of view on a lot of stuff because I grew up with a different culture. So sometimes when we have debates, I can bring something different to the table that American people will not have based on their education, where they grew up, with who. Everybody's got a different point of view based on their own experience. And I know that I'm bringing my own stuff coming from France. And I did like small jobs as a tennis coach, for example, where I knew that being the French coach was not easy because when you taught tennis to kids, it's like hard to be respected at the beginning because you're the funny dude with a funny accent. But with time, they understand that I'm like them, just don't speak as good as them, which is funny when you're talking with like 5 years old kids and they're already better than you. But that's nothing much. But yeah, no. And I always talk about food. Like you were talking about beers before. I mean, I'm French. It's in my culture. Alcohol is a big part of the French culture with wine and champagne, for example. And I always talk about food, raclette, fondue. Like they're asking me about all this type of food, and it's something like that is really recurrent about like my topics of discussion because they are curious to know about um, my culture too, and because they know that it's definitely different, and they also start to understand that food in the US is sadly most of the time not as good as in France. But yeah, that's how I bring my French culture into my life in the US.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. All right. Our next scholarship recipient is Annelise. And Annelise was awarded the Dr. Thomas Bennett Scholarship. And I will pass it on to you.
Thank you, and merci pour l'expérience et l'opportunité. My name is Annelise Hoover. I'm a sophomore at Seattle Pacific University studying International Business Administration and minoring in Francophone Studies. My journey with the French language started in the 2013-2014 school year. Just taking my French classes, and I found them to be the most influential for me in my development as a student and person. Learning French presents a lot of unique challenges that have helped me to become a much better student in terms of how I study and making sure I study in an effective way. And I really love the way that learning the language and this language in general has continued to challenge me. It's really a lifelong journey with the amount of years dedicated, and even after years of learning, there's still so much more to learn because you open so many new doors to French ideas, French culture, the history, the people. It's definitely a treasure trove of learning, and I've really enjoyed the challenge of going about it. And I think it's a knowledge that can help people understand a bit more about like cross-cultural understanding and international relations. And I think that in turn can make a more understanding world and an understanding individual. And that kind of knowledge is one that I consider to be one of the most important to try to learn about. And I didn't want to give this kind of knowledge up. And I really didn't want to end my studies of a country that I've come to love. So French has become my minor. And then that leads me on to my journey with SPU in French. That kind of added a whole nother layer of challenge as I've been able to see a little bit more about Francophone history and France's relations to a greater Francophone world. I really credit my teacher, Dr. Beauclair, with giving me the opportunity to learn more through literature and current events, and just kind of looking at the history of France's relations to different countries and what being someone who's Francophone or French could look like. And having that access through the language itself has been so rewarding and something I never would have been able to experience just as an English speaker. There are a lot different stories being told, and I'm really thankful for the ones I've been able to connect with, just because they've been able to help me reflect on who I am as a person and how I interact with people and how I see myself as an American and how my country interacts with other people. So it's really helped me in how I can be a good community member and treat others. So yeah, these studies have kind of shaped who I am, and it's really made me crave perspective and to respect lives that I would have never known existed had I not learned French. And I think there's just so much further to go and a lot more to learn. And I believe the next step in that process is kind of getting, I guess, into the nitty gritty of it and actually going and encountering that broader world in person, which kind of brings me to studying abroad. So I'm hoping to study abroad in the fall of 2021 at the Institut Catholique de Paris to continue challenging and growing my studies on this French language journey. If fall doesn't work out, I'm hoping to go at a safer time, but that's what I'm looking at right now. I believe that interacting with native speakers and their ideas and stories will continue to evolve my language abilities and kind of who I am as a person in a broader and more expansive world than the one I've come to know. And I think that doing this will also provide new challenges that can grow my language speaking abilities and how I understand different ideas and I guess interact with a whole nother set of experiences, I guess is the best word. And I don't know, I think there's a lot of significance in that. And I'm really excited to take advantage of those opportunities. And I really wanted to thank Seattle-Nantes for helping me achieve this goal and providing me a way to let a little, what is the word? Let it be a little Francophile with everyone here. I'm really excited to meet everyone and to be part of this association and learn a lot more. So thank you for this opportunity. And I'm really excited to meet everyone.
Thank you very much. That was amazing to both Antoine and Annelise for sharing a little bit about yourself. Are there any questions from the members?
So I have a question for Antoine. You said that it was challenging when you first moved here and you had the 2 years in high school in Bellevue. How much English did you know when you arrived, and what kinds of challenges? Can you give us any specifics about what was the most challenging for you?
I started learning English in 6th grade. Oh yeah, 6th grade. My parents always put English as like a focus for me to get good at when I was still in France at school. And they gave me the opportunity to travel in the US and in England in families, in host families, for me to improve in English. So I moved to the US and I was like, okay, I feel like my English is pretty decent. It's gonna be okay. And so I thought I got like a medium level in English, and I moved here and I was totally wrong. Totally wrong. I got lucky. My best friend at in Bellevue is Moroccan, and he speaks both English and French fluently, perfectly. So he was kind of my translator. Um, and uh, um, when I was challenging to be understood or just to communicate, he was like translating what I was saying. And for 3 months, literally 3 months, no one was able to understand what I was saying, but I was not able to understand what they were saying too. So during 3 months, there was that weird moment where like both sides were like, oh, yes, yes. And it was just awkward because we both knew that communication was not working. And he was like, after 3 months, my friend was like, we can finally start to understand what you're saying, because my accent was also stronger. It's still strong, but it was worse. My English, everything that is grammar, sentence formulation, it was worse than now. It's still not perfect, but I definitely improved. I also had a lack of vocabulary. The English you learn at school is different than the English kids are talking. And that's what Annelise is gonna struggle with when she's gonna be in France. Good luck. It's not gonna be easy, but you're gonna do it. But yeah, vocabulary is a key thing. At school, you're learning how to speak English, but not how to communicate with each other. So you can go to a place like a restaurant, you can ask for a table to get some food, but you're not gonna be able to communicate with the server and stuff like that. And that's what is the most difficult. And you can maybe see, I like talking, I like to express myself. And when you can't speak and you can't be understood, it's really frustrating. And that was one of the main challenge. And the other one is also because I was in 11th grade, and a group of friends were already made. And you have to integrate yourself into this group of friends without able to communicate and explain who you are. Just being known as a French kid with a French accent was not enough to get into groups, because I was not able to understand what they were saying, and vice versa. So all of that combined were challenging, but I made it through, and now like I'm fine. I'm in a great school. I love what I'm doing. I made great friends. Life is good. Yeah.
Thank you. So then I guess a question for Annelise, kind of related to that. So yes, Antoine, I think has just kind of laid out what some of your challenges are going to be. And I can confirm, as having participated a couple of years ago in a flower and garden show in Nantes. Again, I thought my French was fairly decent, but I didn't know the words for things like wheelbarrow and compost and bark mulch. You don't learn those. So as you're looking towards your time next year in France, you're not going to the university that most of the SPU French students go to. Are you going to be more embedded in the French culture because you're going to a university where most of the students are French and not American exchange students? Do you know?
Thank you for that question. I actually don't really know. I think a lot of people, especially at SPU, go to, I think it's the Sorbonne, and that program was taken off for this next year. So it was just the Institut Catholique that was available for me personally. So I'm not entirely sure, but I am looking forward to the challenge. And I'm sure the many migraines that are going to come in my future.
Will you be living in dorms there? Is that how that works?
I'll be living with the host family, which I'm thankful for.
All right, terrific.
Just for your information, host family is the best thing you can have as an immigration program, because you're gonna actually discover the culture through someone who lived there instead of going into dorms. Because in dorms, you're gonna meet a lot of people, and that's great. But if you really want to experience the culture, living with a family, and I suppose they might have kids like that, it's gonna be really helpful to discover different universe. And yeah, no, I tried and it's really great. Great memories, great time. And if you like have a good level in French, it's like a decent one. It's just gonna be even easier to progress because you're gonna hear French all the time. Living in another country is the best way to improve your language. And I talk from experience.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think my family's an international family and they all found it really helpful to live with other people and just get acquainted with a different language. So thank you so much for sharing that. And nice to meet you as well, Antoine.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay, well, we're at the noon hour. Does anyone have any other questions or comments or anything they want to say? Otherwise, we'll just all go eat lunch.
And have a beer.
I just want to say that this has been really,
That was my
really
line,
great.
actually, John.
Sorry.
Let's go have beer. Well, two lucky people get to have free beer.
Sadly, can't drink them. I'm not legal in the US. I'm gonna have to bring them back this summer with me in France.
There you go. There you go. You're gonna have to give it away or something.
No, just hide them from my father.
Oh, okay.
There's a realist.
Or you can get the T-shirt and baseball cap.
There you go.
Oh.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. It was good to see everyone this morning.
Yeah, thank you. It was really nice, really great. I enjoyed listening to Chris and hear what he had to say, and it brings to life the whole idea, this exchange between us and France regarding the beer. I thought it was great.
It was a COVID-safe project.
Yeah. And I also enjoyed hearing from the scholarship recipients and your checks in the mail.